Cool. So I think we can start. It's 3 p.m. UTC. So my name is Alessio Del Monti, and this is the second community call of PieDAO. Today is March 20. I'm gonna share the agenda real quick. We're gonna start on a light topic, as we have been initiating a pirate meme competition last week, starting for the Pi Day. So we thought that was interesting. And then we have a special guest today. Mona is gonna introduce us about Melonport. She's gonna speak a little bit about asset management on chain. Very excited about that. Mick will follow up by sharing some updates compared to what has been done last week. If you recall, if you have been following us, last week we've been discussing the first allocation called Cash Plus, but more generally this idea of using pools. Like Mick has been speaking a little bit to the architecture based on Balancer, and now he made some upgrade in terms of storage pattern and that he wants to share. Then we're gonna have Dan is gonna speak about the front-end architecture and the work he has been doing on NPM packages. Then we're gonna have a small Q&A. And besides that, if we have some time, I'd like to kind of give a sneak peek of something I've been working on, which I think has been beneficial. We had a number of different discussion into the forum post. If you didn't join just yet, go to forum.piedao.org. You will find a number of interesting conversation about general thoughts about the economy and the mock index competition and so on and so forth. So starting from the meme side of things, who doesn't love memes? We started this competition proposed for the Pi Day. The rules are pretty simple. There is a weekly prize of 1,000 DAO for the best meme. The calculation are pretty simple. One retweet is 1 point and one like it's 0.5 points. And then there will be an additional grand prize of 2K DAO token for the best meme of the month. So the competition is gonna go around for 4 weeks. The way you participate, it's extremely simple. You just post your meme on Twitter, you use the right hashtags, pirate and hashtag DeFi, as well as the DAO ticker, and then you can retweet your meme on the Discord channel. You can find more information over here. So you can kind of follow that. Sorry about that. I'm gonna close Telegram real quick so we don't get any more notifications. And yeah, like I think we are almost about at the end of the first week. By the end of the call, I'd like to share some of the piece of art that came out. I think some very spicy meme actually came out. But for the time being, I'm gonna leave the word to Mona and the introduction to Melonport.
Hi guys, thanks for the invitation to speak today. I would just say a couple of words on what Melon is, and hope that throughout the call or in future we can have some interesting discussions on how Melon can be useful for PieDAO. For those of you who are not familiar with Melon, it's asset management infrastructure or on-chain asset management infrastructure, which enables anyone to set up and manage a decentralized investment vehicle. It can be a fund, it can be any kind of fund, it can be a hedge fund, it can be an index, it can be an ETF-like product, it can be algorithmic, it can be rebalancing, automatically rebalancing, or whatever. It can be discretionary. We don't take any view of what that should be. We leave that to the creators like you guys. And we just try to build as best infrastructure as we can for the people building products. The infrastructure also enables people to invest in those vehicles. So each of those vehicles that are created using Melon interact at the back end or through a smart contract level with other DeFi protocols, which also makes things like risk management possible or accounting. So the protocol calculates the general accounting of the fund and publishes your track record on the blockchain daily. It also makes fee calculations possible. So management and performance fees, i.e. the fees that you receive for managing a fund, like administrative fees, but also fees that align your performance with investors. So some share of the profits for yourself. Yeah, and it gives full transparency to, of course, to the investors and all the usual stuff. So I can talk about it for a while, but I think actually the easiest thing is to, Alessio had asked me to do a demo, and I think that's actually also the easiest way to understand how the protocol works. So I'll jump in and do a screen share if that's okay. And
yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, and if anyone has any questions, like, yeah, just feel free to shout during, I don't know if, yeah, just interrupt me at any time.
Yeah, anyone can either raise hands or just leave a message into the chat, and your question will be addressed.
Okay, perfect. So actually, I was just, before the call, I was just opening a fund, and well, I was just investing in a fund so that I could show you the demo, but I forgot to sign the transaction. So while it does that, I'm just gonna, can you guys see, by the way? I forgot to check.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
indeed.
Okay, so if you go, so basically every wallet can set up one unique fund. So I'm just gonna show you the perspective of somebody who has never, I just went to a wallet that has never set up a fund before. I connected already with MetaMask, but you can also connect with Fortmatic, Coinbase wallet, Frame, or some other wallets as well. And if you've never done it before, this button appears called Create a Fund. So here you create a fund, and a form comes out where you can customize different parameters. So you can, I might do this just for fun after the call actually and deploy this, but I don't think we're gonna have time on the call, so I'll just show you, but you could do a fund called PieDAO. I don't know, what should we call it, Alessio? What strategy do you want?
I actually been very fascinated by the idea of making out an actively managed fund for arbitraging DAI and USDC. Yeah, I don't know. Like you can pick it, but I will call it.
I'm just going to call it Pi discretionary for now, and then we can create others later. And let's I don't know. Let's just make up a 2 and 20 because it's standard, but it's just an experiment. I'll deploy this later. But this is a management fee, which is just a time-based. It's meant to cover the administrative costs of running an investment vehicle. So this is just a percentage of the assets under management. It's irrespective and independent of performance, for those of you who don't know. The performance fee is actually designed to align performance. So anything over and above, right now we benchmark all the funds against Ether, but we in future probably will allow that to change. But it's just for easily comparing the performance of funds against each other. But you can basically select a performance fee, which will basically take a cut of, if you outperform ETH by 100%, and therefore, let's say you have an AUM of, I don't know, 10 million. So 5 million of that is profit. Basically 20% of that profit is for you to keep, and the other 4 million is for the investors. So you take a fee that is aligned with your performance. Of course, if you lose money, you get zero. So the protocol can calculate those fees automatically and distribute them. You also select how often can you calculate your fees. I'm going to select a year because it's like the standard, but you don't have to. You can select any number of days you want. These are the DEXs that we're integrated with at the smart contract level. I just select all of them, and these are the assets that the fund will accept as investments into the fund. So if you only wanted to accept, maybe you don't want to accept USDC and DAI after this big sell-off, because that would be, yeah, if you believe the market's going to rally, maybe you want to disable USDC and DAI for now. So that if you're receiving investments, you're receiving it in a token that you think is going to outperform ETH. Anyway, once you do that, you just deploy the fund. Sorry, your faces are in the way of the create a fund button, but
I think you can move the small window with the faces.
Yeah, I'm trying. Okay, it's going in weird places, sorry. Yeah, so here you would just create a fund. I'm not going to do it right now because actually I have no ETH in this wallet, but normally you would just have to sign a few transactions on the blockchain, and then your fund is deployed. Once any fund is deployed, you can basically, oh, what's wrong with my internet? Yeah, once any fund is deployed, you can now see it in the library of the fund universe. So I'll deploy it later and show you guys, but here we can take a fund that I deployed a couple of days ago, for example. And this is Intercon Capital. I was doing it for the DeFi virtual conference they did a couple of days ago. And any fund that you want to search for, you can now see it on the main page. So all the funds are listed here. There's, I think, 233 funds. You can sort them by share price. Every fund starts at 1, so this fund is up 400%. You can sort it by daily change, best performer, worst performer. You can sort it by AUM. The biggest fund is 555 ETH at the moment, or $80,000. And if you say, oh, okay, well, this fund is the best performing fund, why? Let's click into it and see what has it done. You know, you can actually go and see it's the positions it's holding, its Kyber network, which obviously rallied maybe because of the Coinbase listing last week or something. And also the staking stuff that they're doing. But yeah, you can see that this fund was 100% in KNC. You can also go see their trade history. You see that they've only ever bought KNC, so they just got maybe lucky, maybe it was smart. It's avant-garde. I'm gonna say smart. That's our company. Basically, yeah. So you can view, and all of this stuff is on chain, super transparent. You can also see like the rules the fund manager is abiding by. If you wanted to, going back to like, so the fund fact sheet, you can see what rules, what fees the person has selected, annualized returns, etc. But basically, yeah, you can. It's like a library of funds that you can sort through. Just one more cool thing that if you don't want to see the performance versus ETH, but you're more interested against another asset, you can see here the quarter to date, year to date, month to date, etc. performance against WETH, DAI, BTC. And also, if that's not good enough for you, you can choose another asset to compare against here, and it will just add a new row for you. So that's pretty cool. And now I'm going to go to a wallet, and actually my fund, which I deployed with another account, just to show you how it looks like from, actually I forgot to show you one more thing from this one. Hang on. If you're browsing and you find a fund that you like, basically,
I think Brandley is saying, are we supposed to see your screen, Mona? Ah, good. Okay, all right. That's fine. He's saying it. Okay, great.
So yeah, just one thing that I want to say before going to the other view, but if you find a fund that you like, let's say, okay, Rose Gold, he or she is up 11% today, I want to invest, you can easily basically just hit invest and select a number of shares. Let's do it with this one, for example. Flash Boys. Okay, so we go into invest and redeem. Basically, we'll give you a form. How many shares do you want to buy? I don't think I have any ETH in my wallet, but if I had ETH or WETH rather, basically it would let me buy shares in the fund. I would hit invest, and then this investment request would get executed at the next price feed update. So you can invest in any fund unless the manager has restricted who's allowed to invest, and I'll show you how they do that later. So the next thing I want to show you is an already deployed fund. So if I go to my wallet that has deployed a fund, this button now comes up, my fund. Let's click on my fund. Basically here you can see I deployed this Intercon cap. It's invested 100% in WETH, which I actually just did before this call. Basically the viewpoint from the manager is, okay, you get the overview page, of course. But here you get also invest redeem if you want to become the first investor in your fund. So I just became the first investor in Intercon Capital before this call. The trading interface is also available now because you're into your fund. You can only trade within your fund or to invest in a fund. Basically, here what we've done is we've aggregated the order books of all the order book protocols that we're integrated with. So 0x, V2, V3, and Oasis DEX. You can click on the order you want to adjust just the quantity. It populates everything else for you, and then you submit request. And basically, yeah, here for the other part of the protocol is basically like the market makers. So if you want to request a quote from a market maker, you come here, you say, okay, I want to sell WETH to buy VAT. It will give you a quote. Usually you also see the Uniswap quote, but I'm seeing a message here which is new. Okay, so they've updated the Uniswap adapter, which means I have to go to the admin and just click update. I'll show you how to do that later. But anyway, it's pretty user friendly and intuitive. Usually that doesn't happen, but usually you'll see the two quotes and you can trade with the best one. And here it's pretty cool. We've integrated a private market maker with a non-custodial settlement. So this is for bigger order sizes, roughly up to about $150,000. You can request for much bigger quotes and they'll give you quotes in bigger size. And that's just kind of to avoid the liquidity issue that we see sometimes on DEXs in some asset pairs. Yeah, and last two kind of features from the manager perspective is the rule sets that you can add to your fund. The important thing here, one of the most important things to understand about Melon Protocol is that the whole point of it is to establish trust between the fund manager and the investors in the fund in a trustless way. So in the same way that 0x or DEXs in general, they establish trust between buyer and seller, we do it between manager and investor. So you don't have to worry that the manager is going to misappropriate your assets, run away, buy a car instead of managing your assets, buy a private jet, whatever. You basically know that he has to follow the rules of the fund that he has stated inside the smart contract. So some of the rules were in the form, but some of the more strict rules come in the rule set section. So here you can add a price tolerance, which means that if you want to guarantee some kind of control over the manager not trading outside of a certain price range, like if the last price was 10, maybe you don't want him to be able to buy an asset at 15. So you could say like, I'm going to put a price tolerance of 10%. So you can't buy an asset 10% away from the last price to avoid the sort of washing or draining problem. Maximum number of positions is like, it's a traditional rule that you see a lot, which is tries to focus the manager rather than make them look at thousands of tokens and not focus at all. Maximum concentration is also there usually to enforce discipline, to make sure that the manager is not betting the house on one coin, which ends up like failing or going to zero. So you can establish rules like 20% max concentration. By the way, every time you want to add a rule, you just go down here, you select the criteria and you deploy. So it just means signing a transaction. Another cool one, which some people might find useful, is the investor whitelist, where you can restrict who's allowed to invest in the fund by adding their Ethereum addresses. And also if there are assets you definitely, if there are only a certain sub universe of assets that you want to be trading, you can add this them here and deploy. And in the other way, like if you want to forbid trading in certain assets because you think they're very low quality or you don't trust the tech behind them or whatever, you can also add to the blacklist, and then that fund will never be able to trade. Importantly, because these rules are designed to protect investor, you can never remove them once you add them. And also just a small side comment that these are just the rules we started with, but anyone can write risk management rules and add them to the protocol. And they're kind of quite easily added into the system. But these are just the ones we started. And then lastly is just the admin page. So these are rules that can be changed after deploying because they don't really have any impact to the investor necessarily, that a negative impact to the investor. So here you'll see, due to the Uniswap message we got earlier, what I had to do is actually add Uniswap and update here by signing a transaction. So once I do that, the fix will now be enforced and I'll be able to trade with Uniswap again. I probably shouldn't have done this right now actually because the gas, oh no, the gas is fine. But yeah, anyway, so let me just sign that.
MetaMask being MetaMask.
Yes, exactly. And your faces are also in the way again. But yeah, okay, so I just signed this. But yeah, so once that updates, basically the protocol should enable me now to get quotes from Uniswap again. And also if you scroll down here, that's why this was a bad idea. But if you scroll down, basically the other stuff that the admin pages allows you to do is to claim your fees. So we talked about management performance fee. There's a button that literally says claim fee. And if, let's see it now actually, yeah. So there's a accrued management fee, accrued performance fee. In this case, the fund is new and I haven't done anything, so there's nothing accrued. But if there was, I could just claim fee. And also you can shut down fund. And shut down fund basically makes the fund, it closes all the functionality of the fund except allowing investors to redeem. So yeah, so that's pretty much it. Happy to take any questions or explore things now or later or in future calls. But yeah, very
sure.
excited.
No, I think thank you very much for showing the way Melonport works. And by the way, this is the new UI, correct?
This is the new UI. Yeah.
So congratulations on that release. I know there has been a lot of work put into that. So congrats. Yeah, I do have a number of questions. I think I kind of want to open this up to the community as well. But I've been very interested about Melonport generally speaking, and like we have been kind of moving through this ethos in PieDAO of not putting all the eggs in a basket. So we've been thinking about asset management protocol as using a variety of them, like being more granular and then trying to find the best tool for the best use case.
Yeah.
And we feel like Melonport is extremely flexible for doing very specific things, particularly like if you are actively managing a fund, which I think is great. I'm also very much fascinated by the idea of aggregating, let's say, like the top 5 performing funds of Melonport and putting them into a pie, which is something I'd be interested to kind of explore a little bit more. We've been briefly discussing between the two of us the fact that as for now, funds shares are not transferable.
Yeah.
Felix says, very nice UI Melon. Thanks for the demo. Thanks, Felix. So I'm kind of interested to understand, assuming we might want to do, like, for instance, a top performing pie of Melon funds, how does that would work? Like, do you guys need to do an upgrade for the fund smart contract and everybody has to upgrade, or how would that work?
Yeah, so that would be an upgrade at the protocol level. It's not a major upgrade. Actually, we had this fund share transferability at one point, and we really debated about whether to keep it or not. Some people were in favor, some people were not. But if there's a demand to, and that was very early stage. We're talking 2 years ago now. We had this debate. In the end, it's not a big or major piece, like it's not a major complication for us. If we need to remove it, we can probably remove it. But it would need to be bundled up in the next protocol upgrade potentially. So if it's something that you really want to see, I can bring it up with our CTO, who would have loved to make this call, but I think she had a double booking actually. So
I'm here, Mona.
Oh, Jenna, hey. Maybe you can take it again.
She's here. Hey, Jenna, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm good, and you?
Good. Are you safe?
I am safe, hopefully, yeah, on lockdown.
That's great. So do you want to comment on that, or?
So actually, I wanted to ask you to repeat the question just to make sure that I understood.
Sure. No, we were basically commenting on the fact that it would be very interesting to come out with basically a pie, which would be an asset allocation of the top 5 performing Melon funds. And for that to happen, we are really going for basically an automated way of creating market making. That means like that through an interface, you would say, I want to invest an if, and that if through an automated zap or recipe, however you want to call it, would basically invest in each one of the fund, whatever are the weightings for the pie, and then give back a single share of the pie to the end user. In order to do that, since we really like the idea of basically enabling people to trade within the pie, those tokenized share of the single funds should be transferable. So right. I was asking, about that.
Okay, got it. Yeah. So that's technically that's definitely possible and pretty much straightforward. In the current deployed version of the protocol, we've made the shares of the fund, so they're all ERC20 tokens, but we've made them non-transferable because of the debates that Mona mentioned. But really, there is no reason for them to be non-transferable because it can just be an option for the fund manager to decide. If you have an investor whitelist, probably you don't want your shares to be transferable, but if you don't have an investor whitelist, they can be freely exchanged and traded and whatever. So actually, it's already planned in the next protocol upgrade, which should come out in Q2.
Oh, wow, fantastic. That's great news. And I'm very happy to know that you kind of guys are thinking about that. I think that would be very interesting for a lot of end users and such a compelling product to get broader exposure to a variety of different funds. And I'm happy to talk more about that. I actually do have a number of other questions, but I also kind of want to open up to anyone else.
Maybe if you withdraw from the fund, do you get the underlying assets back, or do they get converted to like Ether, or how does that
Yeah,
work?
no. At the protocol level, the redemption is in kind, which means that you redeem your shares in slice of all of the underlying assets of the fund. Then, of course, you can layer on top of that at your convenience if you want a service that swaps all of the assets into one. Anyone can do that, but at the protocol level, it's in kind.
Rick has a question. He's asking, is there a reason why they can't be transferred within the whitelist?
No reason. It could be.
It was I can take that one actually. It was just we had different requests from different users. Some wanted the transferability to be restricted and others not. I think it depends on the kind of product people are building, basically, to answer that shortly.
But there is no reason we couldn't have shares non-transferable, have shares transferable in between a whitelist, but we just didn't implement that.
That makes sense. I also have a question regarding the basically the infrastructure which is aggregating the order books of a variety of different exchanges. How does that compare to other solutions such as 1inch or like other DEX aggregators? Like how the routing of the order is actually working on like behind the like inside, like, so if you can comment on that, I'd be very interested to learn a little bit more about it.
Yeah, sure. So just to be clear, the aggregation of order book and the aggregation of liquidity that you could see on the Melon terminal is just it's a natural side effect of the functionality of Melon as a protocol at the smart contract level, because in order to enable a fund manager to trade against whatever exchange, we have to build an adapter to this exchange. So your fund is plugged in with all of those different adapters, and for each exchange there exists one adapter. So because you're plugged into all of those, we just thought it's just nicer for the user to see when there is an order book, to see all of those order book aggregated. For the liquidity pools like Kyber and Uniswap, we used to actually construct an artificial order book out of their prices, but that was actually more confusing to users. So we changed it for this release and put it into a different component where you can just compare the quotes. So I don't think, to your question regarding how does that compare to 1inch or DEX, AG or Paraswap, we're really not trying to compete against these kind of services, because that's really not our business. But we're actually in talks with Paraswap to integrate with their contract as well, and that for us that's just a sort of like exchange another DEX adapter to Paraswap. We don't do any routing of the orders on our side because our front end is completely serverless, so we don't have any centralized server with like possible logic like that. It's not to say that we won't have it in the future, but it's really not really in our priorities at the moment. And I just wanted to add something else, which is a feature that is not in production right now, but also going to come in the next upgrade, the ability to split a trade across different DEXs. You can do that across any DEXs that your fund is integrated with. You could, in theory, in one transaction, split one trade to get a better price.
That's fascinating. I'm actually looking forward to that. And if anybody else doesn't have any question, I actually have a couple of more. If anyone has questions, please feel free. I can see one question from Eve Glavas. So is it possible in future to see 1inch aggregator integrated into Melon protocol? I think you already answered that question. I think you guys are going with Paraswap at the moment, but are there any plans for 1inch?
Actually, yeah, it's a really good question, because it's a debate that and discussion that we're having with, actually 1inch, we didn't speak with them specifically. But DEX AG, we're definitely in touch with, and ParaSwap as well. And for us, there's a little bit of a question because, as I said, we have this at the contract level, we can split the trades across different exchanges directly from the Melon contract. So there is no upside for us to integrate another contract from another team or project. So adding another layer of risk to do something that we can already do. So we're in talk with them to see, what's the most relevant way for us to integrate with them. Maybe using their API without using the contract. If they want to, we wouldn't do that. If they would not agree with that, but that's the kind of discussions that we're having with ParaSwap at the moment, and very open to having it with 1inch and DEX AG as well.
I think if I'm correct, correct me guys if I'm wrong, but 1inch has also an on-chain protocol that will split the trade. So that will happen completely trustlessly at the smart contract level. It's called the one split. That's something we've been using lately. So that would enable you to pretty much don't think about the trust of the API and just execute the trade. So happy to share some information about that.
Familiar with 1inch, as in I've never taken a deep look into their code base or contracts, but yeah, what I was saying is just that we can do that at the protocol level, but we don't have, we haven't built an infrastructure to source all of the prices and figure out for the user what's the best way to perform that trade across all of the available exchanges. And we don't really want to get in that business, just use the services from other teams that literally dedicate themselves to that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that answered the question very well. I do have one last question before anybody else to jump. So how do you guys think about leverage? Like, is there any plan to get leverage for fund manager, maybe by signing a custom transaction or opening a CDP? Or like I was briefly mentioning before with Mona that I had playing with this idea of opening a fund for basically arbing between USDC and DAI. That would be quite interesting right now since we can open CDP with USDC, which will basically give you that leverage for a number of time. So how do you guys think about leverage? There are any plans for that or for custom TX to be signed at some point?
Yes, so in our kind of like 3-year roadmap available online, you can see all of the details of the things that we are thinking about or will be thinking about over the next few months. And leverage is one of them. It's not the immediate next one, so I can't really give you details about how we approach it because we haven't researched and decided on a specific implementation or integration because the next immediate thing that we're working on now is the integration with lending protocols, i.e. enabling funds to lend assets on Compound and also the DSR for the moment. That are going to be the next two integration, but allowing the fund to take leverage to borrow assets from any of those protocols is probably something not for the next version, but the one after. So it's definitely on the roadmap to research, but I can't give more insight into which protocols will be integrated for that purpose because there are a lot of technical considerations that we have to take. One of them being that we're trying to limit any integration. Well, it's not really that we're trying to limit, but we have to limit integrations to protocols that allow us to get, an atomic kind of settlement. So if we are giving away assets out of the fund, we need to get something back in return in the same transaction. So an ERC20 representation of whatever the position is, and not all of the protocols offer that at the moment. So it will highly depend on this. And also we do extensive due diligence from a technical perspective and from a financial perspective on protocols before integrating them. So hard to give more color on the approach until we actually spend the time doing the research there, which should be probably in a couple of months.
Thank you very much for the answer. Like now I'm gonna open it up. Is there anyone else who has some question? Feel free to raise your hand or just unmute yourself. Otherwise, I'm gonna thank Mona and Janelle for their time and introducing Melonport, and we hope that to have them very shortly after to discuss, who knows, maybe a Melon top 10 pie.
Thanks, Alessio.
Absolutely. Thank you very much again. So now following the agenda, we have Mick. Thanks, Mick, for sharing the Melonport new front end, and great work on the UI again. So Mick is gonna speak us about a little bit storage pattern that he has been exploring for the construct of the pies. So I'm gonna leave the word to Mick, and
Yes.
yeah, talk later.
Yes, thank you for the presentation on that was great. I had a bunch of questions, but they were all answered in the presentation itself, so that was good. So a little bit of an update what I've been doing this week. We deployed the early version of Cash++ to mainnet, which is the Pi we talked about last week, which is a mixture of different stablecoins which bear interest. And we implemented a cap, because we want to test Cash++ at a cap. So if something goes wrong, it's not that big of a deal. We changed the storage pattern to make it easier to upgrade, and we worked on the automation for minting and redeeming from smart pools. So the upgradable smart contracts are. Can you guys hear me? Yeah, right?
Yeah, we can hear you. For some reason, I could hear you a little bit better before. I think something changed slightly.
Yeah, my headphone turned off right now.
Okay, that's why. That's why. Yeah, but we can still hear you. We can still hear you.
Yeah. Okay, so they're cool. They allow you to add new features, catch possible bugs, so you can upgrade later if there's a bug in your smart contract, if you catch it before somebody uses it. And they allow you to, after the fact, update for gas usage. So you can write your smart contract now and make it better later without having to worry about gas optimizations at this moment. So how do they work? Well, basically you have a proxy contract, and behind it is an implementation. The proxy contract has the storage, and it delegates the calls to the implementation. So they get executed in the context of the proxy itself, but the actual logic is inside of the different contract, and you can change this implementation if you want to. And implementation holds the logic and writes to the storage of the proxy contract. So we have been working on this. I've built a Pi proxy contract, which is uses unstructured storage to prevent collision, because both the proxy and the implementation will use the same storage slots. And they allow for pausing on the proxy level, so you can pause the proxy itself. So, and we have Pi smart pools. They share a common interface, and they are protocol agnostic. So I'm really looking forward to integrating with Melon. It does not really matter if the Melon funds become tradable, because we can just wrap around it. And they are upgradable. So, but the issues with this are you can only append to the storage, because otherwise, if you change something in the middle, then you're overwriting an old storage slot, and there will be something in there which you don't expect. Well, if you have contracts inheriting from each other, it's going to be even a bigger mess, because if you inherit something, you put something there, it's impossible to only append to the storage. And most solutions we see now end up in ugly code, like unstructured storage and eternal storage. I'm actually been using unstructured storage in the proxies, but I might change that. So we've come up with this, actually somebody else came up with this pattern, which is called Diamond standard, which is a new standard for proxies, which is quite interesting. And I'm not using the entire thing, but because it's quite new, but the storage pattern is quite interesting. It's basically a mixture of the traditional and the unstructured storage, which allows you to do like domain-specific storage per contract, even per the ones you're inheriting from. So like a parent contract can have its own storage slot and storage stuff there, so you never have to risk to overwrite it. So how does this look? This is actually from the Pi Smart Pools contract repository. Normally you have these variables in the normal as normal storage variables. Oh. But here we actually put them in a struct, And then we assign a slot where the struct should be located, and you can load the pointer to the storage struct via this function. And if you actually want to use it, like setting an allowance, you load the struct, and then you set the allowance directly on the struct. So this decouples it from the normal way of doing storage. And that's what I've been doing this week. I don't know if there's any questions about it, but I thought it was quite neat. Like I didn't make it up, this storage pattern, but it's actually Nick Mudge made it. You can read the standard here. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mick. Bart say awesome. I actually do agree. I think it is a very neat pattern, and I'm very excited by the fact that we are using it and starting to test it out. I do have a very specific question, which is like, how do you feel, since this is a fairly new pattern coming out, and I know we are not right now using all of it, how do you feel about risk or regarding a more traditional solution like unstructured storage or eternal storage?
I think unstructured storage ends up in unreadable code, or less readable code, which is risky by itself. The same is for eternal storage. And it's not really complex, as you saw before. It's quite simple. So yeah, I don't feel any risk.
So we generally feel good about that. If anyone has some comments, feel free to vocalize it. Obviously, you can also always comment on the forum post following the community call if you have some ideas. And then Mick is probably going to share over there the GitHub of the EIP for this diamond pattern. So if you haven't, please check it out. And this is how we grow as a community in terms of finding out new solutions that are better for everyone. So is there any other question? Otherwise, I'm going to leave the word to Dan. Looks like we are good. So Dan has been working on preparing a number of different NPM package and kind of componentization of the architecture from the front-end side of things. This is very good news because we obviously want people to be able to contribute on the application layer at ease, and that's exactly what Dan is making possible by his work. So I'm going to leave the work to Dan and talk later.
Okay, hey everybody. So as Alessio said, we're trying to get ready to accept outside contributions, and we wanted to make the prospect of creating a front end for a new Pi as simple as possible. So I'm going to give you just quick overview. This process is very much a work in progress, but did I lose everyone? No, I'm here. Okay. All right. So we start here at the PieDAO docs, and I'm just going to take care of your heads getting in my way, like like they were getting in Mona's way earlier. Before I really get started here. Okay, so the documentation is very much coming along. If anyone wants to start contributing to PieDAO in a very simple way right now and is familiar with Aragon, this would be a great place to step in. We've got a lot of pages in here that could use a little bit of love, as you'll see if you walk through it. But I've added a new section down here called Development Resources. So anyone who's interested in contributing to the development can start by taking a look here. A couple of basic things. We're taking an approach of creating an NPM package, or more accurately, separate packages for each main segment of functionality that is possible within the PieDAO ecosystem. So the first one, two that I've created here are a plugin for our Tailwind styles. We use Tailwind CSS as our framework. This is a really great framework for developers and responsive styling. If you haven't seen it, definitely take a look. We link to that from the docs here as well. You find these docs at docs.piedao.org if I didn't mention that already. So Tailwind is the package that provides plugin functionality in all of the styles. There's a whole detailed section on modifications we've made to the default Tailwind styles here that you can read through if you're interested, and all of our default colors and spacing and all that fun stuff. So what I'm going to do today, though, is show you the front-end template. The front-end template is kind of the starting point for building a dApp on PieDAO. It's designed to be deployed to IPFS, and we have a version that's deployed here. When you hook up IPFS with Cloudflare on top of it, it's pretty quick. So we like this. This is what the front-end template looks like when you clone it to start and get going. So what I'm going to do is install the new ETH connection module that I just created this week. That is not yet documented, but you'll see kind of what we're aiming at in terms of the development and how it'll go here. So first step would be cloning the front-end template and getting into that. And now what we can do is add the ETH package. So you can see all of these packages, by the way, on NPM. We have a link here in the docs. The PieDAO organization has all of our stuff in it, including all of Mick's contract work. So as we go through here, we're just going to add the PieDAO live coding ETH package. And while that's getting started, I'm going to start implementing it here. So here's Tailwind, the configuration file. So all of these packages have, if they have styles and React components in them, they have Tailwind packages for them as well, which provide the required styles. So this one is, since the main package is called ETH, this one is called ETH-Tailwind. And so all you have to do is require that and then add it to the plugins here. And then we can go into the source. The front-end template all starts from index.js, where you can initialize any of these packages or anything else that you want to add to the site. So here we'll add PieDAO/ETH. And we're going to pull in the ETH object, which is actually a React simple store, another great package that we linked to from within the docs, and you can also see in the code on GitHub. So here we need to initialize the store, which gives us all of the sorry, I'm used to coding in Linux, so I got to context switch over to my Mac shortcut keys here. So we use block native for notifications and simple ID for sending notifications and tracking which wallets have used the app as well. It's a pretty cool new application from a fellow Tachyon participant. If you haven't seen that, I'd definitely check that out as well. Makes it really easy to see who your users are and send them messages based in kind of an intercom type style without having to compromise their identity. So we initialize ETH here, and then I'm going to add the modal component to the main app component that we have, React component. So we have connect modal. And that all you got to do is just add that in here. And then we've got our header and I'm going to add the connect button to the header. Okay, so now last we need to add a quick little style to the style CSS. So all of our, if you follow the pattern, all of our components have a container that wrap them. So you can always count on that for modifying any styles. The way Tailwind works is with these apply classes. So I'll let you, if you're interested in that, take a look at the Tailwind docs for that. But here what I'm going to do is add the, say within the header container, the connect button should have a margin on its left of 2 rem. And see if I got everything correct. We should be able to start this up.
The tension.
This takes a moment because of all of the style classes. Whenever you modify the styles, it does take a little while to compile, but outside of that, it's pretty quick. And we use some Webpack trickery to compress that down and get rid of all of the styles you don't need, so the packages aren't very big once it actually compiles in production mode. So now that we've got that, I'll switch here to localhost. And if I didn't fuck it up, there we go. We've got our button. I should have disconnected to begin with here, but basically it gives us our connect Web3 button, gives us our little modal here to connect to MetaMask. If you're not connected, it'll pop up the connect box. And when you reload, you have the account already connected. So this gives all of the main functionality you would expect, including things like my internet connection is unstable. But if we switch to the wrong network, we'll get a nice little error notification. Hopefully, yep, there's block native kicking in, telling us we need to be in the right spot. And we can see Nico's wonderful styling here, Ray telling us that we have an error if we do that. And all of that's kind of hooked in just with that very simple add-in code. So
That's
if we
pretty
look
great.
at that, we see that all we did was add the dependency, add the connect modal, add the connect button, and initialize the ETH store, change a small style, and we're done. So that's how we hope to have all of the major components of the front end work. So if you want to use any of the existing functionality that that we already have, it'll be that simple to add it in, and we'll have documentation for all that fun stuff. You can take a look if you're interested more at the PieDAO GitHub repo for all of the source code related to Tailwind and ETH and the other packages that we have included as part of this. Questions?
Thank you very much, Dan. I think this is great. Minako says, awesome. I actually think, we're going on the right path of making like a great library of components that will be useful not only to PieDAO builders, but pretty much everyone who wants to start making the apps. So I think that's fantastic. And I look forward to see like in the next calls, like the evolution of this project. If there are any questions, this is the time. to vocalize that. Otherwise, you are very much invited to go to github.org PieDAO, and then you will find all the relevant code and also the documentation at docs.piedao.org. All right, seems like we have no question about that. So this was pretty much all for today. Before we go, I kind of want to relay a couple of conversations that we've been seeing in the forum. I want to remember to everyone that we have a pretty active forum and Discord channel that you can join. If someone can share the links over here, that would be appreciated. But that being said, like, you can go at forum.piedao.org. There are a number of different discussion going on, and I kind of want to do a small recap of the interesting one that we've been seeing. So let me share my screen again. By the way, like since the recent announcement of PieDAO, we've been having pretty good traction in terms of press. You can find a small summary, including some Chinese coverage, German coverage. Like, we've been featured in a number of different newsletters, including Wix in the Ethereum, and Lex from Substack.com. By the way, if you are not following this newsletter, you should definitely do that. I think those are great outlet of news, rates, in Germany, and so on and so forth. So feel free, the Defiant, obviously, from Kami, and a number of others, so feel free to jump in there. Besides, we have an ongoing discussion from the icon of the DAO token. Nikon has been working on a number of different designs, kind of evolving over time. You can kind of find the different reference community being suggesting a number of different things. We also explored a few creative pirates icons. We are now leaning in after a pretty big discussion about these ones, but like, the discussion is still open, nothing is set on stone. So feel free to jump into let's choose an icon for the DAO token discussion. Besides highlights from the week, you will find an analysis basically wrapping up the idea of the fact that we're basically entering the quad 4 stage of economy. This is an idea that follows the so-called model of growth inflation policy. It's a pretty big analysis, so I'm not going to wrap it up. But I think it's an interesting, and who are into financial advising, or speaking about asset management and portfolio allocation, you might find some value over there. And you can feel free to contribute to the discussion over there. The last thing I wanted to signal before jumping into the memes is that one of our community members in Discord, Taxon Blockchain, has been vocalizing a number of times the idea of making a mock index competition, which I find it's an interesting idea. He has been asking some help in figuring out some infrastructure and basically helping out with the spreadsheet. You can find the discussion over here. So this is his spreadsheet. It's not super sophisticated just yet. So, but we're trying to help out by basically making a small template for potentially like mock index competition, where you can set up the kind of assets that you're looking into, and then this stuff is pretty much hooked up to an API for Google Finance for taking regular traditional stocks, and Crypto Finance for taking crypto price feeds. So everybody can fork these things up once this is ready, and test their own allocation. On that regard, this is not ready just yet, but I also been working on an API to facilitate that process. This is, by the way, transparent into the PieDAO backend, and the way this works, it's pretty simple. You just have over here, you create a new portfolio. Right now with the asset class is GLD, TLT, and BTC, and then this will automatically backtest basically your strategy in terms of capital starts, capital end, the kind of ROI you're splitting over a year, and then you can see your performance month after month. This is still an ongoing work, so I wouldn't say it's ready. Probably it's not. It will take a little bit more time, but ideally what I want to end up having is a very easy interface with basically a few inputs where you choose whatever ticker you want to track, and crypto or traditional asset class, and then you come out with a bunch of analytics. So that being said, before we do this call, I kind of want to signal some of the memes that have been coming out from the meme competition. I thought some of these were very funny. This is from newnormal.earth. I want to remind that in order for people to win the competition, they need to get likes and retweets. So if you want to support the creative endeavor of these people, like you should do so by checking this out. This is pretty fun. We didn't see that diversification is the only free lunch in DeFi, which I thought it was pretty funny. And then we have a few others. I will link this stuff into the chat. Otherwise, you can find it into retweeted by the PieDAO. We have another one by Doman with Ray the Pieman basically fighting the financial meltdown, COVID markets outing, and a bunch of other things. But that was pretty much inspired. Another one with the Matrix Pill, basically convincing Warren and proposing the pie pill to Warren Buffett. And then once he does get the pill, it basically becomes this psychedelic Burning Man version of Warren Buffett. I thought it was pretty interesting. Another one from Crypto Toy, doing a classic Homer meme that once even Homer gets it, but it was interesting as well. And then we have even an animated meme still from newnormal.earth. I think this is the one taking more likes and retweets right now. So I think by the week, like the entire competition for this week will finish tomorrow. But this looks like it's gonna win. Trying to raise some dough. Any good pie starts with a recipe. And then finally, there's a new meme with this kind of spicy, but I think we are all over 18 over here, which I thought was pretty funny. So that's pretty much it. I will share these links with you guys, and if you loved and they made you laugh, please give them a like or a retweet. These people will get a prize for their work. So that being said, that's all for today. We are gonna have a new community call next week, still Friday, 15 UTC. I will still try to bring some interesting guests to talk us about what's going on in DeFi and what are the kind of solution that we might look at. Before we close, if anybody wants to say hi, feel free to do so right now. Otherwise, we will be closing this call in a couple of minutes.
And I'm going to stop the recording now so you can all say hi without having to worry about it being on the internet for everyone.
I think that